remembering those that survived the sinking of the RMS Titanic on April 15, 1912. The information provided was obtained and used from findagrave.com. This video contains passengers and employees with the last name starting with P and Q. The remaining survivors will follow shortly. Julian Padrón Monet, born 1885, in Spain. He worked as a chauffeur. Julian boarded the Titanic as a second-class passenger. He escaped in Lifeboat 9. Julian married fellow Titanic survivor, Florentina Duran y Moore. He passed away in 1968, at the age of 83. Julian is buried in Cuba. The next survivor is Emilio Palas y Costello, born 1883, in Spain. He boarded the Titanic as a second-class passenger. Emilio survived the sinking in Lifeboat 9. He passed away on the 28th anniversary of the collision in 1940 at the age of 56. Emilio's burial details are unknown. The next survivor is Oscar Leander Johansson Palmqvist, born 1885, in Sweden. Oscar boarded the Titanic as a third-class passenger. He managed to jump into the icy waters as the final 6 feet of the Titanic sunk into the Atlantic. Oscar was rescued in Lifeboat 15. The Red Cross Assistance Committee gave him $200. Oscar lived the rest of his life near his siblings, in Connecticut, working as a toolmaker. He had gone to a fortune teller about 5 years before his death, who warned him that the next time he went into the water, he would drown. Oscar dressed in his best suit and stopped at a neighborhood barber for a shave before heading out to catch a trolley for a night on the town. That was the last time anyone saw him alive. In 1925, Oscar was reported missing and was found dead in a park reservoir by park employees. Pictured here is the spot where Oscar was found 22 days after he was last seen alive. Even though the police reported the cause of his death as drowning, the funeral home said that the body had not been submerged in water that long. The family felt that it had been foul play. Oscar's nephew stated that he never went near the water after the Titanic disaster. He was a strong man and would not have drowned in a pond. The minister was quoted as saying he suspected foul play and called for an autopsy. Oscar never married, but was murdered by the husband or boyfriend of the woman he was having an affair with. The family did not pursue his death any further because it may have caused friction for the family. Oscar passed away in 1925 at the age of 39. He is buried in Connecticut in an unmarked grave. A marker was dedicated in 2013, funded by the World Titanic Community, with the help of the Titanic International Society. The next survivor is Ludi Davis Temple Parrish, born 1842, in Kentucky. In 1870, she married Mr. Parrish, and they lived in Kentucky for many years. Ludi boarded the Titanic as a second-class passenger. As she was in Lifeboat 12, Gus Cohen jumped into it as it was being lowered. He bruised her side and leg. After the disaster, the family lived in Missouri for a while. After World War I, the family relocated to Hawaii. In 1927, Ludi went on a world tour, being gone for several months, but returned before her death. In 1930, Ludi suffered a massive cerebral hemorrhage at her home. She lingered about a week before passing away. Ludi was 88 years of age. She is buried in Hawaii. The Find a Grave has her birth year listed wrong. Following her death, the family left Hawaii, leaving Ludi behind. The next survivor is Charles Henry Pascoe, born 1867, in England. He was an able seaman on the Titanic. Charles survived the sinking in Lifeboat 8. He passed away in 1937 at the age of 70. Charles is buried in England with his wife, possibly in an unmarked grave. The next survivor is John Pierce, born 1878, in England. He was a fireman on the Titanic and survived. In 1933, John was serving on board the ship British Yeoman as a donkeyman. He died from injuries sustained to his head after falling 20 feet in the engine room. John was 54 years of age and was buried at sea. The next survivor is Albert Victor Piercy, born 1887, in England. He was a steward, third class on board the Titanic. Albert survived the sinking and collapsible lifeboat C. He testified at the British inquiry. Albert passed away in 1952, at the age of 65. He is buried in England. The next survivor is Edith Warren Pears, born 1889, in England. She boarded the Titanic with her husband, and were first-class passengers. Edith was rescued in Lifeboat 8, but her husband perished in the sinking. She worked as a nurse during World War I. She married Mr. Crow. Edith suffered some form of mental illness, and passed away in a hospital, from pneumonia, caused by having ingested ammonia. She was 66 years of age. And her ashes were scattered in the Garden of Remembrance, in England. The next survivor is George Pelham, born 1873, in England. He was married to Elizabeth Agass. George was a trimmer on the Titanic. He survived the sinking in Lifeboat 16, but was transferred to Lifeboat 6. As a result of surviving 2 sinkings, he suffered a breakdown. In 1935, George was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. He passed away in 1939, at the age of 66. George is buried in England, but all the headstones have been removed. The next survivor is Maria Josefa Perez Soto y Vallejo Penasco Castellana, born 1889, in Spain. She boarded the Titanic with her husband and her maid. They were first-class passengers. Maria and her maid were rescued in Lifeboat 8. Her husband perished in the sinking. Maria passed away in 1972, at the age of 82. She is buried in Spain. The next survivor is Walter John Perkins, born 1874, in England. He was a quartermaster on the Titanic. Walter was rescued in Lifeboat 4. He passed away in 1954, at the age of 79. Walter lies beside his wife and their only son, in England. The grave remained unmarked, until 2001. The next survivor is Mary Ann Perot Pickett, born 1878, in Canada. She boarded the Titanic as a first-class passenger, and was 33 years of age. Mary was rescued in Lifeboat 3. She was a maid or servant to a wealthy family, then becoming a widowed housewife. Mary passed away in 1968, at the age of 90, due to congestive heart failure. She is buried in California. The next survivor is Edgar Lionel Perry, born 1892, in England. He was a trimmer on the Titanic. Edgar survived the sinking, and also World War I. In 1940, Edgar was killed along with his wife, during a World War II air raid, part of the Southampton Blitz. Edgar was 49 years of age. He is buried in an unmarked grave. The next survivor is Ernst Ulrich Pearson, born 1886, in Sweden. He was immigrating to America, together with his sister and niece. They were traveling to Indiana. Ernst's sister and niece perished in the sinking. He was rescued in collapsible Lifeboat B. Ernst made an insurance claim for personal injury of $5,000 and loss of property in the amount of $250. He also received relief from the American Red Cross. Ernst's wife and 2 sons joined him in October. 2 more children were born later. In 1914, Ernst Pearson changed his name to Ernest Pearson. He worked as a bricklayer. Ernest passed away in his son's home at the age of 65 due to a heart attack. He is buried in Indiana. The next survivor is William Chapman Peters, born 1886, in England. He worked on the Titanic as an able seaman. William survived the sinking in Lifeboat 9. His family claims he also survived the sinking of the Lusitania in 1915. However, there is no record of William on the cruise list. William passed away in 1950 at the age of 64. He is buried in England. The next survivor is Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Godfrey Peuchen, born 1859, in Canada. After private schooling, he joined the Canadian military in 1888 and became a lieutenant. In 1897, Arthur developed a method for extracting chemicals from waste wood for use in manufacture of products such as dyes, pesticides, and explosives. Arthur became president of the Standard Chemical, Iron, and Lumber Company. He received rank of major, and in 1911, Arthur was a marshalling officer at King George V's coronation. He owned the yacht Frida and was vice rear commodore for the Canadian Yacht Club. Arthur boarded the Titanic as a first-class passenger. He offered to assist in rowing one of the lifeboats. The ship's second officer told him he could go if he could get down the falls into the lifeboat 6. Arthur was an experienced yachtsman, so he became one of the few men to survive the disaster. He subsequently testified at the New York hearings into the disaster. Arthur was also vilified by the public, just because he was a man who had survived. The Great War continued to suffer. Bad investments in the 1920s caused Arthur to lose much of his money. He allegedly lived in his company boarding house for a few years before returning to Toronto in failing health. Arthur passed away in 1929 at the age of 70. He is buried in Canada. In 1987, Arthur's wallet was recovered from the wreckage. The next survivor is Richard Paul Joseph Frapper, born 1882, in Poland. He resided in England. Richard worked on the Titanic as a dining room steward, second class. He survived the sinking in Lifeboat 9. Richard never married, and later moved to New York, continuing to work on ships. In 1958, he attended the premiere, A Night to Remember. Richard passed away in 1964, at the age of 81. He is buried in New York. The next survivor is Harold Charles William Phillimore, born 1888, in England. He worked on the Titanic as a saloon steward, second class. Harold remained on the Titanic as the ship sank. He was the last person pulled out of the water by Lifeboat 14. Harold passed away in 1967 at the age of 78 due to cerebral thrombosis. He is buried in England. The next survivor is Alice Frances Louisa Phillips Mead, born 1891, in England. She boarded the Titanic with her father and were second-class passengers. Alice was rescued in Lifeboat 12, but her father perished in the sinking. She later married Mr. Mead. Alice passed away in 1923 at the age of 31 due to tuberculosis. She is buried in England. The next survivor is the Phillips family. Mother, Kate Florence Phillips. Unborn daughter, Ellen Mary Walker Phillips. Kate Florence Phillips, born 1893, in England. She boarded the Titanic with Mr. Morley, the father of her unborn daughter. They were second-class passengers. Kate was rescued in Lifeboat 11, but Mr. Morley perished in the sinking. In 1913, Kate gave birth to her daughter. She later was remarried to Mr. Watson. Kate passed away in 1964, at the age of 71. She was cremated, and her ashes were scattered in England. There is also a memorial plaque in memory of her. Ellen Mary Walker Phillips, born 1913, in England. She passed away in 2005, at the age of 92. Ellen was cremated and her remains were scattered at sea, in England. The next survivor is Benoit Charles Picard, born 1878, in Poland. His birth name was Burke Trembusky. Benoit boarded the Titanic and was rescued in Lifeboat 9. He never married. Benoit passed away in 1941 at the age of 62. He is buried in California. The next survivor is Rosa Pinsky, born 1880, in Poland. She resided in New York. Rosa was on her way back after visiting relatives in Poland. She was a widow and boarded the Titanic as a second-class passenger. Rosa was rescued in Lifeboat 9. She was 33 years of age at the time and required hospital care after the disaster. Rosa was awarded $200 from the American Red Cross. Because of ill health, she returned to Russia where she had relatives. In 1943, Rosa was killed in the Holocaust at the age of 62. The whereabouts of her remains are unknown. The photos shown here are of mass grave sites, and it is possible Rosa is in one of them. The next survivor is M.B.E. Herbert John Pittman, born 1877, in England. He was a third officer on the Titanic. He was rescued in Lifeboat 5. He passed away in 1961 at the age of 84 due to a cerebral hemorrhage. He is buried in England. The next survivor is Alfred John Alexander Podesta, born 1887, in England. He was a fireman on the Titanic. Alfred's monthly income was £6 or $29.20. He was rescued in Lifeboat D. Alfred passed away in 1968 at the age of 80. He is buried in England. Alfred is believed to be the last surviving crew member from the boiler and engine rooms. The next survivor is John Thomas Poindexter, born 1884, in Bailiwick of Jersey. He was an able seaman on the Titanic. John was rescued in Lifeboat 12. He was married to Florence Gallichon. John's date of death and burial details are unknown. The next survivor is Frank Port, born 1889, in England. Initially pursuing a career as a clerk, he joined the Royal Navy. Frank was an unmarried cook's mate. Despite universal good conduct, this was his final naval voyage. Frank was invalid as a result of his epilepsy. He went on to join the merchant service. Frank was a steward, third class on the Titanic. His monthly income was £3 or $14.60. Frank was rescued in Lifeboat 13. He returned back to England. Frank never married and continued to work at sea. Apparently, a sickly man, in his later years, in 1922, he was a cook on board the SS Appalachia. Frank was admitted to the Dreadnought Seamen's Hospital ship on account of his epilepsy and other complaints, where he spent over 10 days before being discharged. He was forced to take land-based work. In 1939, Frank was a chef in an officer's mess at the Royal Tank Corps Barracks. He passed away in an emergency hospital in 1943 at the age of 54 due to renal failure. Frank is buried in England in an unmarked grave. The next survivor is Emilio Ilario Giuseppe Portaluppi, born 1881, in Italy. He was a stonemason. Emilio boarded the Titanic as a second-class passenger. He was returning home in New Hampshire after a visit to Italy. Emilio saw a half-filled lifeboat being lowered and attempted to jump in. He missed his footing and fell into the water. Emilio survived the sinking by being pulled out from the water in Lifeboat 14. He passed away in 1974, at the age of 92. Emilio is buried in Italy. The next survivor is Lily Alexenia Wilson Potter, born 1855, in Michigan. In 1876, she married Mr. Potter Jr. The couple had 3 children. Lily survived the sinking of the Titanic. She passed away in 1954, at the age of 98, due to heart failure. Lily is buried in Pennsylvania. The next survivor is George Alexander Prangnell, born 1881, in England. In 1906, he was married to Louisa Deck. George worked on the Titanic as a greaser. He survived the sinking in lifeboat Collapsible B. George retired from sea in 1924, then worked at the Vesper Thornycroft's shipyard as a grain runner. He passed away in 1953, at the age of 71. George is buried in England. The family dropped the first N from their surname, now the spelling is Pragnell. The next survivor is Frank Winold Prentice, born 1889, in England. He worked on the Titanic as a storekeeper. Frank didn't feel the collision, but felt the Titanic stop. When he got on deck, Frank noticed the ice in the forward well deck. He jumped into the cold water, off the ship's stern. Frank was picked up out of the water, in Lifeboat 4. While in the lifeboat, he tried to drink a bottle of whiskey. It was thrown out by Quartermaster Walter Perkins. Frank was interviewed for the televised Titanic report, called A Question of Murder. Frank passed away in 1982, at the age of 93. He was cremated, and his remains were given to a family member for private disposal. The next survivor is Alice Maud Pritchard, born 1876, in England. She married Mr. Pritchard in 1904. Alice worked on the Titanic as a stewardess. She survived the sinking in Lifeboat 11. Alice passed away in 1948, at the age of 72. She is buried in England. The next survivor is Arthur John Priest, born 1887, in England. He was a fireman on the Titanic. Arthur survived the sinking in Lifeboat 15. He also survived disasters aboard the Olympic, Asturias, Alcantara, Britannic, and the Donjel. Arthur passed away in 1937, at the age of 49, due to pneumonia. He is buried in England, in an unmarked grave. A headstone was erected, with fund donations from the British Titanic Society, in 2025. The next survivor is Harold John Arnold Pryor, born 1890, in England. He worked on the Titanic as a steward, 3rd class. Harold survived the sinking. He passed away in 1949, at the age of 58. Harold is buried in England, in an unmarked grave. The next survivor is Alfred Pugh, born 1891, in England. There is no information available on this individual. I am leaving this lily for you, you are not forgotten. The following information was obtained and used from the Encyclopedia Titanica website. Alfred was a steward, 3rd class on the Titanic. His monthly income was £3 or $14.60. Alfred, together with his brother, nearly missed the sailing. However, his other brother had to return back and missed the sailing. Alfred was rescued in Lifeboat 14, while his brother perished in the sinking. He returned back to England and continued to work at sea. In 1927, Alfred was married, and the couple would have 2 children. Alfred later left sea, and in the 1930s, he and his wife ran a combined shop and post office. Alfred passed away at a hospital in 1962, at the age of 71. He was cremated and his ashes were scattered in the Garden of Rest, in England. Alfred left an estate worth £4,175, or $11,700, to his wife. The next survivor is Robert William Pusey, born 1890, in England. He was a fireman on the Titanic. Robert's monthly income was £6 or $29.20. He was rescued in Lifeboat 1. Robert was killed in action on the trawler HMS Dirk when it was torpedoed. His body was never recovered. Robert passed away in 1918 at the age of 28. He is remembered on a monument located in England. The next survivor is the Quick family. Mother, Jane Richards Quick. Daughter, Winifred Vera Quick van Tungerloo. Daughter, Phyllis May Quick. Jane Richards Quick, born 1878, in England. She married Mr. Quick and they would have 4 daughters. Jane and her 2 daughters survived the sinking. Their destination was Michigan, where her husband already established a home for them. Jane passed away in 1965, at the age of 86. Winifred Vera Quick van Tungerloo, born 1904, in England. She was 8 years of age at the time of the sinking. Winifred married Mr. Tungerloo, and they had 5 children. She passed away at a hospital in 2002, at the age of 98, due to congestive heart failure. Phyllis May Quick, born 1909, in England. She was 2 years of age at the time of the sinking. Phyllis married Mr. Murphy. She passed away in 1954, at the age of 44. Phyllis took her own life by a gunshot wound to the head. They were all buried in Michigan. If you like this content, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to my channel at MeTime806. Thank you very much.